Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Master This with Mark Azulay and Dr. Avivi. Today, we are continuing to talk about perfectionism, and we're going to take a little bit of a deeper look and look at where it comes from. So, we're looking at the origins, the birthplace of these patterns. So, as you're listening, if any of these resonate with you, or you think that you have a different idea, please comment, like this, let us know. We'd like to know where people stand on this. If you can remember when your perfectionism was born. So we're going to be talking about three main places. We're going to start first in the workplace. Then we're going to talk about larger cultural ideas of perfectionism. And then lastly, because we have psychology backgrounds, we're going to talk about your family and where it might have been birthed in the family system. So Adi, you want to kick us off with some workplace perfectionism?
Yeah, so when we talk about workplace perfectionism, what we talk about is often where people see the outcome of perfectionism. However, it also comes from there. There are messages that our society give to workers. There is the expectation that you will be productive as a worker, that you will perform at a high level at all times, that mistake can be avoided, and that you're not going to need rest if you take anything for yourself, if you slow down, if you kind of be playful with mistakes and learn from them. It might reflect negatively on you, especially in our current economy, where anything could be a reason to fire someone or to lose your job. There could be a lot of tension and stress coming from the hierarchical order of wherever it is that you work that gives you a message that you are not allowed to make mistakes, that the product has to be a very particular and coveted product for whatever it is. And that message is very anxiety provoking and creates that sense that I need to come across as perfect. The workplace also, and that is very true in American society, is a professional setting. You're not allowed to be a complex human being that might have a good day or a bad day. You're supposed to leave your personality and your emotional world at home, which isn't possible. We always bring ourselves into work. And in fact, that could be a very beneficial aspect of our interaction with projects, ideas, connections with others, but that is often rejected and frowned upon. There is a lot of criticism and a lot of judgment of anything that isn't kind of a cookie cutter of how an American employee is supposed to be, perform, and interact with others. That creates that tension, that self-demand that I need to be perfect, and it creates a ton of shame and guilt when I am not presented this way, or when I don't think that I was perceived this way in the eyes of others, especially superiors, especially people who are my bosses. I want to always look perfect to them because of those ongoing messages. And in fact, companies, and especially companies that are more in the world of economics and commerce, a little bit less in psychology, but that doesn't mean that doesn't happen. Choose deliberately people, they try to target employees that match a particular kind of a personality presentation, which is people who are perfectionists, who are suffering from low self-esteem, who feel guilt and shame if they don't produce to the maximum. And the reason is that it's easier for someone like that to lose themselves, to lose their sense of boundaries and limits, and to over-identify with the product, with the company, with the sense that my job is who I am. And by that, do extra hours, extra work, give their weekends, go above and beyond in ways that eliminate that individual's knowledge about what do I need? Where is my joy? Where is my creativity? What kind of relationships do I want at my workplace? Those are pushed aside, and there is just the eyes on the price. I don't know, Mark, if anything comes up as I'm talking about this, or if you have examples that you want to share. I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
All
There we
right,
go.
now I can hear you.
Weird. Yeah, so to talk more about perfectionism, the idea in the workplace is that it works. It actually gets rewarded many, many times. And I've seen this, I work mainly with engineers, and mainly engineers actually transitioning from being a technician to being a leader, right? And in a technical role, production is rewarded, right? Shipping the program, building the widget, creating this new process, this new system. That's what gets rewarded. And the issue with a lot of tech companies is that that gets transferred over into leadership, where a good leader is a leader that's doing overt things like increasing the amount of money that their team generates, right? Or closing the amount of time it takes to get a product launched or shipped. But I think it's similar to what you're talking about, Adi, is that those more covert things like having a healthy, happy work environment, or having increased communication or creating even employee retention, those things are really not measured in the same way. So what happens is that because of the workplace culture, people that have this perfectionist idea, this production focused mindset, they keep getting promoted over and over and over again. And the person that maybe doesn't buy into it as much, right, that's doing more stuff covertly or just is more about creating harmony in the workplace or trying to live a sustainable life, can you believe that? They don't get rewarded. So they're often told very perfectionist messages of like, you got to show up, give 110% every day, don't ever let your emotions come into work, or, always act as though your boss is watching you, right? These are kind of these common messages that are given to workers that can make that, if you already are perfectionist, trigger what you got. And if you're not, actually slowly convert you through the workplace culture into being a perfectionist. So we talked a little about workplace culture. Adi, can you tell us about general culture? How about American culture or Western culture in general?
So when we talk about the culture that we live in, it's a culture of capitalism. It's a culture that is really focused on productivity, on perfectionism. It's a culture that asks people to put aside community, put aside sustainability, put aside free time. We're moving more and more to a time and a place in which you cannot have what you need in order to live in cities, for example, without having more than one job for a lot of people. Our culture is giving a message that a general message that good life is supposed to look in a very particular way. The message that who you are is tightly connected to your professional occupation, and those are extremely hierarchical. There is a very almost cynical and critical view of the different ways in which one can present. And you can think about it yourself. When was the last time that you met someone new and you didn't immediately ask them about what do they do for a living? And that's not to criticize anybody. I ask that of others all the time. It's a matter of curiosity. And I can say for myself that my identity is extremely connected to the fact that I'm a psychologist. It's hard to differentiate sometimes between those two entities of me as an individual and a private person, and me as a psychologist and the work that I do professionally. And that's something that is created culturally by seeing shows in which everybody works and the person who doesn't is a loser or the moocher, by this general message that one must find a job, and a particular job, in order to be a valuable person. That creates perfectionism. It creates a sense of overachieving and wanting to have a product that is particularly shiny and particularly flawless in order to feed that fear of going down the ladder in the hierarchy. That also will feed that perfectionist part in ourselves. And I can give a little bit, maybe to go back to the workplace environment. I kind of have an example of that. For example, a friend was telling me about actually a lovely place where they were working, that there was a really beautiful communication. However, when there was one of those Mondays that us Americans love so much, those long weekends, people were told to give people who had a particular intake slot. I'm talking about psychologists. They were doing intakes on a Monday, were asked to give another slot some other day of the week. And because there was good communication, because there were different values, they were able to say to their boss, what are you talking about? We deserve a day off. It's okay for us to have a day off. However, that's not what the culture is saying. And their particular boss was able to kind of digest that and accept that. And of course, most clinics are part of bigger organizations. There is an organizational message that's part of this culture. Another example is at a different clinic. A friend of mine was sitting late. She was there late. I don't know exactly why. And her boss came and said, "It's great to see that you give more of yourself." And this person was like, "Oh my God, why is my boss not saying to me, go home? Why are you here at 7 p.m.? Do you have too much work on your plate?" But for him as a boss to go to his superior and say, "Yeah, I'm like squeezing every cent that we pay these people out of them," was something valuable. And it's so hard to change that. Instead of the employees having to manage up the way the people in that clinic that I just talked about did, and kind of reflect back to their bosses that rest is okay, it's needed. Most of the time, that kind of compliment, "Hey, you're here at 7, how great," seeps in, feeds into that idea that my rest, my time, me not finishing something and pushing it for tomorrow, not as a procrastination, just because like time management is not okay. And that really can feed again that perfectionist monster inside. I don't know if you want to add anything to the general culture.
Oh yeah, definitely. Also, want to shout out to Allison Guerrero for tuning in live. Thanks so much for joining us. It looks like she's sharing our link with somebody else that's looking for help with perfectionism. So I hope that this is
Cool.
really helpful for you. And please, Tina, let us know if this is something that you enjoy listening to. So what to add? I think you covered a lot. You did a fantastic job. What I would add is I once dated an Instagram influencer. Okay, and I was surprised by how much went into her photography and her job, because I think through things like social media, we're seeing many people's perfect version of their life, right? And this person, hopefully she's not watching, but this person would take hundreds, no joke, hundreds of photos. Have perfect light setups, have crews, have teams, have a lot of things working together to create that image that looks candid, right? That actually looks like, hey, it's just me hanging out on a camping trip with my friends. And being exposed to social media, we're consistently and constantly seeing all these perfect moments from everybody. And whether that be in the health and fitness and beauty aspect, there's a whole burgeoning culture that I don't know if we're quite there yet of, business influencers and even psychotherapy influencers, right? There are people constantly putting out these very, very manufactured messages that make us, because we're human, compare ourselves to their life, right? We want to be, oh, I could be this, or oh man, I'm not this. I need to be more perfect. I need to work harder. We're getting these constant messages. We're getting another comment. Oh, Melissa. Hey, Melissa. Thanks for joining us. What she says is, I found this example at my husband's work. He took 3 days off work after we delivered our last child, and when he returned back to work, he was given a high five for coming back so quickly. Adi, she's
Exactly.
speaking directly to your thing. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, it's so hard to take days off for even sick days. It's really frowned upon. And on the one hand, you're given the message that you're supposed to come to work even if you're sick, because otherwise you're burdening the system. But if you come to work when you're sick, how come you're sick? How dare you be sick? You're supposed to be healthy all the time. You're supposed to push yourself both physically and emotionally. Think of it. A father just had a baby being born. That's, as a society, there is so much push to have kids. The family, the image of the family is being given to us. And then that will create guilt no matter this father, Melissa's partner, has no chance. Because if you don't go back to work and if you just take the time off and enjoy it, you're going to be criticized for that. And if you don't, you're going to lose your ability to really enjoy your family. There's no winning in a perfectionist society. So we're going to talk next time about how to resist those messages and to kind of feed yourself a little bit. And we're also, when we talk about this, we do want to talk to bosses and people in the upper levels of wherever you are, whatever kind of work you do, to really pay attention to the messages that you give to your employees. And one thing that Mark and I were talking about just when we were debriefing before is, if you are your own boss, you're probably a terrible boss. You're probably a perfectionist boss. Those of you in private practice, or if you have your own business, from time to time, ask yourself, what would a really generous and non-perfectionist boss would do in this moment? And give yourself the opportunity to have a good work life for yourselves. We're going to move now to talking about family patterns that have contributed to the creation of perfectionism. Mark, do you want to take us away with that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it all roots in the family. And what the family does is it kind of creates these pre existing conditions, right? So perfectionism was a currency, and I'll say more about that in a moment. In the family, it means that when we get to the workplace, we're going to be more susceptible to those types of things. Adi, I like that you talked about hiring strategies of some companies. We're looking for people that have these, tendencies. And that's true. That happens, right? I've been on teams where they're actually looking for people that overperform, right? Or people that, are willing to embrace the identity of the company. But that happens in our family first. And I think it's really common. The very stereotypical one is the oldest child, right? Especially the oldest child of parents that are a little bit younger, that the child often has to grow up very quickly, has to become a parent figure, has to take care of their siblings. Oftentimes, the oldest child is rewarded for being easy, right? Being easy. And what being easy means is having no needs, right? Or suppressing your needs so that you're able to just perform, right? It's like, oh, it was an easy kid, right? They picked up their kid at their sibling at school, right? They didn't freak out. They, did great on their homework. It's so much about achieving and suppressing. And I think that's really important for the perfectionist idea is that the people that are good at perfectionism are often feel emotionally dead. In a lot of the work that I do with high performers and high achievers, that is very common. Is as a psychotherapist, I want to say, hey, what are you feeling? How does that make you feel, right? And most of the answer that I get is, I don't know, right? I don't know. I have no idea. I feel numb. I feel dead. They'll say something, tell a story about their childhood, and I'll be like, that sounds pretty intense. Like, did you feel anything when you told me that? They're like, no. And it's not that they don't care about those things, but it's that they've learned over time to suppress that so they can throw everything into this performance, right? Everything into that. And if you're one of those people, it might seem like a superpower, right? These people often say that emotions feel like a waste of time, right? Or a waste of energy. Or like, why would I ever want to be sad? I'm just like kicking ass every day. I don't understand why you want me to be sad, doc. But the idea is that I've seen it happen is that creates massive burnout over time. People can sustain it, I've seen, to about like 30, 35, sometimes 40 if they got drugs involved, if they're taking a bunch of Adderall or doing cocaine. But after that, it's just downhill. And it often leads to this massive feeling of emptiness and misery. Um, Again, right? I think that's the thing with perfectionism, especially in this culture, to link it together, is that it works. And it provides so much cultural, so much familiar reward, so much monetary, financial success. Like it is the strategy if you want to just succeed on that cultural level. But the cost that we pay is dire. I mean, it is, we lose our souls, right? You lose your soul for it.
Yeah. And I want to support what you're saying, Mark, about how families can create that. And some families are extremely abusive, if not physically, then emotionally. And then it's almost easy. You can point to it. Like if you were aggressed upon emotionally or physically when you didn't do what the parent thought you should or wanted you to do, when you were actually doing your thing or actually doing what you were supposed to do, but the parent was chaotic or had substance use problem, or for whatever reason they didn't have any skills of emotion regulation, and their negative emotional response to you, their emotion explosivity, I can't speak English today, came at you at an unpredictable time, that will increase your perfectionism. Because if you can be perfect all the time, you will eliminate that chance of getting all that heat coming at you. So that's a little easier when there is really clear aggression or neglect in the family. However, even in families where parents are just, they're good enough, there might be an area in which they did show a demand for perfectionism. So it could be like they love your friends, they let you dress however you want, they let you eat whatever you want, they're easygoing about time management, but you have to be a perfect student. And they do that thing of like, oh, you got 93, where did 7 points go? And it's not a funny joke. Even if they have some humor in it, eventually that sips in those kind of like demands that you'll be perfect. And that could be like in different families, it will be different thing. Like you gotta to look perfect in certain families events. The family needs to look perfect, even though there is dispute, conflict, and maybe some abuse in the behind the curtains, behind the scenes. So you might have had a lot of healthy parts in your family dynamic, but those pockets of demand for perfectionism that ask you as an individual to quiet something in yourself, to put on an act, especially if it wasn't explained to you, it was placed as a demand. There was no acknowledgement from the parents, like, this is my thing, I'm going to ask you. If that's a demand, as if that's reality and that's true, then you might lose touch with a part of yourself that is informative. That I don't like that. I don't want to dress this way, or I don't care about math, or whatever it is, or just I'm not perfect. I am not perfect, and that's okay, and I'm lovable that way as well. So that information from a family member, even if by and large they were supportive and loving, can seep in for you as an individual to other areas of life. It doesn't stay in that contained area sometimes. Though you might ask yourself, is there something that I feel most self-conscious and perfectionist about? My appearance, my school performance, my work performance, my relationship, how my family looks to the outside world. Is there an area where you can really detect a family message that went down the generations? And just so you know, it takes one person to break that cycle. It could be you. So
Yeah.
that's the part.
We actually get another comment from Melissa that said just that. She was saying, that cycle then gets repeated again with the perfectionist children. And I think just to hammer home that point, what you're saying, Adi, working on this now, which we're going to talk about next week, it's doing the healing of generations. It's letting you be more available as a parent, letting you be a better parent, and hopefully not passing down your particular family's brand of suffering onto your kid, right? Don't worry, you'll mess up in other ways. That's why there's people like us. But to be quite frank, there are better and worse ways to mess up your kid. So the idea is that if we can do this personal work now, then we can soften the blow for our children and let them experience new problems, let them experience, new experiences and grow and evolve.
And next week, we're also going to talk about, that. And we're also going to talk about ways to comfort yourself, feed yourself, and reject that message, even if you actually have to work in a very perfectionist environment. Knowing this information and starting to pay attention, and then giving yourself other messages can be an antidote, because not all of us can be like, it's great, then I'm going to open my own business and I'm going to be a really good boss to myself. That's a huge luxury. So knowing and creating a little bit of an individual culture for you, and maybe some people that you like and can trust among your colleagues or your bosses, and especially if you're the boss, can be really, really wonderful. And we're going to talk about that next time we meet.
Well, thanks again, everyone, especially those of you that tuned in live. Please give us a like, share, look at our web pages. We'll be here again next time, diving into more detail about this topic. We're happy that this is getting such a good reception. Take care, everybody. Bye.